Shishidadha Govindadev Ki Jai. Welcome back to another story time where we'll be continuing our reading of Prema Mala. This is part 3 in the Loved Straight series. And we've been going on a journey with a girl named Kubja who's having sort of an interesting day. She was walking along the main road of her city of Mathura and she comes across a group of boys. She begins speaking to one of them, and then all of a sudden she begins having these experiences. She begins to feel things that she's never felt before. She looks at this boy and she feels as though he sees her in a way that no one else has ever seen her, and he doesn't act like anyone that she's ever come in contact with. So where we left off yesterday was she looked into his eyes and she has this mystical vision where she feels as though she's gotten a glimpse of a previous life. And the entire experience is packed with so much emotion. So if you have the book, feel free to break it out and read along. And if you don't have the book, I am so excited for you to find out what happens next. So we are going to pick up this story right when Kubja has her vision as she looks into the eyes of this boy. She moved slowly, heavily burdened. She felt like herself and yet different. She knew that inside she was the same as she had ever been, but her outward form had changed. She could not even say that she even felt like a person anymore. She had the distinct feeling of horns on her head, like a cow, perhaps. What was this magic? What was this experience? Her heart felt as though it were breaking and her back ached. She heard the echo of her own voice in her head. The sound was different, heart-wrenching, as though she were being choked from within. "Oh Lord, how can I bear them any longer? These kings are nothing more than demons. Please save me." Her own anguished voice brought tears to her eyes, but before they could slip down her cheeks, the vision was gone, and Kubja was once again in the middle of the main road of Mathura, looking into the eyes of the beautiful youth again. Who was this boy? How had she seen all that she had just by looking into his clear brown eyes? She would have continued to stare, but his voice broke her meditation. "May I?" He nodded, his smile chasing away the last of the vision, until all that Kubja knew for sure was that she never wanted to stop looking at him. She nodded, unable to speak, and watched as he began to smear her oils on his neck, arms, and broad chest. His smile grew even more wonderful, if that was at all possible. "Come, thou. These are the most wonderful fragrances I have ever smelled." He took a deep breath in, his large eyes rolling before they slipped closed, as he cherished the smell of the oils, a unique fragrance that only Kubja was able to extract and distill. "Brother, these smell so heavenly, it seems as though the goddess of the earth herself has offered the best of all she has to us." Sham's eyes slid over to Kubja again, and as he winked at her, Kubja felt as though somehow her life had now found its purpose. For the first time, Kubja let her gaze wander over the group of boys. Just as Sham was dark, his elder brother was fair like crystal and just as effulgent. His arms looked as though they were able to carry the burden of the entire earth, and although Kubja found herself in the midst of a group of boys she had never met. She had never felt so safe in all of her life. She watched them move like playful elephants, adorning themselves with her oils and then her sandalwood pastes. She had made them in various colors, and she watched as Sham decorated his older brother in dark pigments that showed up wonderfully on his fair body. Then he ornamented himself using yellow and white pigments. Kubja had thought that it wasn't possible for the two brothers to become any more handsome. She had been very wrong. As she gazed at them unblinkingly, she knew that if she never saw anything ever again, this moment would be enough. The two brothers stood before her, posing as though they were very much aware of how they looked, standing in the middle of the main road like two gods descended from the heavens to walk among mortals. Sham stood with a hand on his hip, his feet crossed at the ankle, his hip bent charmingly. His older brother rested a hand on Sham's shoulder. Sham had been telling the truth. He was bent in 3 places, and he was gorgeous. Kubja let out a shaky breath and tried to compose herself. She looked down at her tray and realized there was nothing left. She would have nothing to give King Kamsa. But looking again at the two brothers, nothing else mattered but them. Sham stepped closer to her, and Kubja fought the urge to back away from him. Nothing should taint his beauty. How can I repay you? He was looking into her eyes again, and Kubja was struggling to think, to breathe even. She felt his foot on hers, his toes that had first caught Kubja's attention, pressing into her own. She looked down, entranced by the way his complexion looked against her own. It was a sight that she never wanted to lose for as long as she lived. She felt his finger under her chin as he urged her eyes up to his own. She almost protested having to look away from where his form joined with hers, but when she found herself enveloped in his amber-colored eyes again, the words dried up in her throat. A heart-stopping smile spread across the length of his full lips, and he lifted her chin, and with it, her entire form. Kubja felt the slightest trace of resistance, the faintest feeling of fear, and the briefest sensation of pain before she gave herself up to him. She knew that with him, she would never be in danger. All she ever wanted to be was his. Never before had anyone laid eyes on Kubja, and now that he had, she would be forever changed. She would be whatever it was that he wanted her to be. She would shape her life around him. She made herself those promises as she surrendered her very life into his hands. And now you have to come back for part 4. I'm going to be dragging this story out for at least another 2 videos because I really appreciate the story of Kubja, especially for the lessons that we can get out of it. And there are lessons that I think really speak to us and what we're going through right now. Kubja is a girl who finds herself trying to go through her life like normal. She would rather hide away, stick to the shadows, and not be noticed. And then all of a sudden, she finds her path blocked, and she's thrown outside of her comfort zone. And the minute that that happens, instead of shrinking away, she entertains the idea of stepping out of her comfort zone a little bit, of talking to someone who she has never spoken to before. And that changes her entire life. So I feel like with this kind of story, we have the lesson that we might feel like we want to hide away, and we are carrying a backload full of burdens and scars and all kinds of troubles and trauma that we cart around with us. And all of a sudden, at some point, we find ourselves outside of our comfort zone. Now we can choose a different route. We can go home and hide. We can stick to the shadows. We can pray that nobody notices us. But with Krishna, when that kind of grace and mercy comes strolling and striding into your life like some sort of hero, it is impossible to hide. Kubja finds it impossible to hide from Krishna, and we find it impossible to hide from that kind of mercy. Nor should we want to. You cannot hide from grace. So I'm really happy that I get to share with all of you, and I'm super thankful and grateful that you continue watching these videos and sharing with me and connecting with me. So thank you again, and I will see you all next time.